Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And if you have just joined us, welcome to the 2020 UAE Public Policy Forum focusing on agile government and becoming future-proof. Our next panel talk examines the pillar of leveraging soft power, building bridges as before. The moderator will be organized with Khalifa University of Science and Technology, UAE, and that is being, hold on just a second. Got a slight situation here. 1 second. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, the current session, allow me to introduce with you, he was with us on the first day, and welcoming him and introducing this session as well. Please welcome with me Dr. Raed, who's joining us on the stage right now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us during our last panel session of this conference. I hope you've found the first day and so far today useful and beneficial. We focused on important issues of agile government. And today now we look at it from a slightly different angle. We look at how agile government or agile governance can actually support soft power. How can we leverage agility to help soft power from different dimensions? And I'm very pleased today to have with me His Excellency Bernardino, who is the Director General of the Emirates Diplomatic Academy. Welcome.
Thank you.
And of course, Her Excellency Dr. Manal Al Taryam, who is the CEO of Noor Dubai and also the CEO of Primary Healthcare at the Dubai Health Authority. Welcome. And of course, we have with us Dr. Rafic Makki. He's the head technologist for Mubadala. He's based in San Francisco and arrived this morning. And welcome. Thank you for making it. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
So what do we mean by soft power? It's been discussed, talked about. The country has a soft power council. We have a soft power strategy. We'll try to tackle it today from different dimensions. The speakers are experts in their fields. And when we discussed prior to the panel how we're going to do this, we have a structure, but they actually do have the freedom to share as much experience with us as possible. Big percentage of the audience are government leaders. And I think it will be good if we talk about how government, in all of its different activities, and how at the future of government, agility can actually support soft power from different perspectives. So we'll look at three major aspects today. We will look at what is soft power to the experts who are speaking with us today. What is it to them? What are the main actors of soft power? We will also talk about, in this current environment of news and fake news and dissemination of information in a variety of different ways, how do they, in their fields, mitigate against that? How do they manage these risks, and how do they take opportunities of them as well? And we'll also talk about the training, education. How do we educate individuals who work in these fields? What do they do to train them, and what is expected of us to do to train them? So I'll start, if I may, with His Excellency León. If you can, from your perspective, as an experienced diplomat, what does soft power mean to you, and what are the main actors?
Well, it is not an easy question because soft power is an evolving concept. And we have here a mix or a blend of very traditional, very historic aspects. For instance, what we call cultural diplomacy, this idea that ideas in a wider sense, culture, art, traditions, even sport or cuisine can be used to project a country, a state, a society beyond its borders. And this has been done for centuries, but today we are using more and more culture whenever we cannot use other tools. You know, everybody in this room remembers how the Americans and the Chinese during the Cold War used ping-pong diplomacy, sports, to build bridges because they could not use diplomats. Maybe some people in the room are also aware, for instance, of the West Eastern Divan, this orchestra where Palestinians and Israelis are playing together. They diplomatically, there are also Syrians or Lebanese. Diplomatically, it's not possible to have a contact, but music allows these musicians to play together. So culture is one of the elements. The other one is public diplomacy. We used to call in the 60s, when we started to use this concept of the first generation, send a strong message. And we still use it. When President Obama went to Prague to announce his nuclear initiative, this was a first generation message. Leader speaking to the people. Then we started to have the second generation, someone responding. Today is the third generation because everyone is responding. Social media allows that a leader sends a message, that citizens from all over the world can respond, and this leader can respond again. So they engage in a conversation. It's not A and B, but it's a real conversation. So soft power is evolving. It's including officials and citizens, and the wider it becomes, the more actors it involves, the more important consistency is. And consistency means that all members of government and society have to make sure that the message is integrated, it's coherent, it's consistent. That's the only way. I know we have here today representatives from many sectors of government. Without this consistency, it is impossible to succeed when it comes to soft power and influence around the world.
And consistency in the environment, in the climate of complexity is quite difficult to achieve. So that's
the most difficult.
It adds to the challenge. Dr. Manal, from your perspective, what is soft power and what are the main actors?
Well, في البداية السلام عليكم جميعا. Well, when we're discussing soft power and how the humanitarian work affects soft power or vice versa, we have to first simplify what does soft power mean. So in simple words, soft power is using your assets to make friends, to influence others as a country or a government or even as an institute. So in 2017, when the UAE launched its soft power strategy, and they've created a council for soft power, and in this council sits some of the most important decision makers in the country, and that gives the impression of how important soft power is in our diplomacy. If you look at the soft power strategy, you'll see that one of the main pillars is humanitarian diplomacy. And the reason for that is, if you look at where UAE is situated on the map, the UAE sits in a hot zone when it comes to political conflict, when it comes to crisis management, but also when it comes to public health. We are in the middle of the Middle East, and we are the connection between the Far East and the West, which makes us geographically a very important decision maker or a very important mediator when it comes to soft power. Other than that, the culture in the UAE, we are a country that has very strong culture when it comes to two main things. The first one is tolerance, and the second one is the giving, the culture of giving. We have learned that through history, either from our religion or from our beliefs. So it's only natural that the UAE will introduce in its soft power strategy the humanitarian diplomacy, or the giving and the tolerance. Part of the work that has been done in those two fields is the establishment of different organizations, different NGOs, the establishing the governance for humanitarian aid. And all this has been done in a very short period of time, in the past couple of years, and it led to making the UAE the second most, on the ranking, the second most giving country, or the second most donor when it came to development aid. I mean, the UAE in 2018 has announced that they have given over 28 billion dirhams just in 1 year for development aid. And development aid does not only mean crisis management or humanitarian aid, there's also the development aspect of it, where you develop sustainable programs. The UAE is also very much concerned in the sustainable development goals, either by funding programs in different countries or actively participating in the planning and the implementation of these programs. If you want to look at a success story that the UAE has achieved when it came to soft power, I think one of the most successful stories, and this could be something that can be studied also at academic institute, is Expo 2020. From the beginning of Expo, if anyone was watching the evolution of how Expo, how the UAE actually participated in the bid and how it won the bid, all the way up to the implementation of the Expo, you'll see that across all stages, soft power has been used. I remember when the first time we've ever heard about Expo, I was a medical student in Germany, and that's the year when Germany hosted Expo. And it was also the year when I went there to study the language. It was the first year. And I was amazed by the number of delegation and the top-level delegation that the UAE was sending on weekly basis to Expo, and which made me go and visit it, because I was wondering, why are they all coming here? But only then that I realized how important Expo is. And that's where the soft power was implemented for the first time. I saw it in reality. And the fact that our delegation was meeting with different countries, using the UAE assets to promote the United Arab Emirates, to make friends, have the connection ready, and it all led to the UAE winning the Expo. If you also look at all the humanitarian work that was done before the bid, the amount of, not just investment, but the amount of efforts, the amount of diplomacy work, the amount of communication that happened between countries, that was massive. Once Expo was won, that was not the end of the story, that was actually the beginning. If you look at now how the Expo city has been built, you'll see that a large zone of it has been dedicated to countries that cannot afford to come and participate at Expo. That's where the development and the humanitarian work comes in as well. So I think this is the first time that Expo has dedicated such a large zone only for countries that cannot afford to come. And the support is ongoing. It's not just ending there. We have been, and MBRGI, which is the Mohammed bin Rashid Global Initiatives, have been communicated with several times for their support. And support does not only mean funding, but there are other ways to support the Expo. So when you look at it all together, even after Expo is finished, like in year 2021, you will see that soft power has been truly implemented across all the levels.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manal. You've just made, I think, the best argument articulated on how Expo culminates all these efforts, and actually soft power comes at the top of it. Thank you very much. That's a great perspective. Dr. Makki, what does innovation and technology have to do with soft power?
They have a lot to do with soft power. So if you think back to the time when Joseph Nye articulated his vision of soft power, since that time, we have witnessed wave after wave after wave of disruptive innovation, beginning in the 1980s with digital data, going through the 90s with the information age, and the age of knowledge computing and insight computing fueled by machine learning that we are currently enjoying today. And over the next 1 or 2 decades, we're going to see additional waves of innovation, from quantum computing to the quantum internet. We will see fully autonomous machines making decisions. We will see machine learning designing new drugs. And we might even see new energy sources such as high temperature fusion. Now, what does all this have to do with soft power? It has everything to do with soft power because science and technology are today and have been for hundreds of years the strongest engines for producing jobs, creating massive wealth, and growing economies. Right? And innovation in technology in particular has an effect across society. It affects government, it affects industry, it affects business, it affects schools, it affects universities. And it translates directly into economic growth. Now, when talking about innovation, it's good to pause and look at the definition of innovation. So traditionally, innovation was defined as invention plus commercialization. Invention plus commercialization. So no commercialization, you're left with just invention. Right? But more recently, a new, very interesting definition has emerged. And that came out of Marco Iancetti of the Harvard Business School. He's looking at innovation as invention multiplied by impact. Now, this is a very unique way to look at innovation, and I think it makes a lot of sense. The greater the impact, the greater the innovation. No impact, no innovation. And when you look at it broadly like that, impact doesn't have to be a technology impact, doesn't have to be a business impact. It can be impact in government, it can be impact in the environment, it can be impact in society in general. And so when we talk about impact, I ask the question, what does more positively impact a nation than innovation? When you take a look at all the things that innovation can produce, from new jobs to growing the economy to massive wealth. So aside from ensuring the safety of its people, right, what does a nation value most? It values prosperity, and innovation gives you that. So that's how I tend to look at innovation vis-a-vis and its relationship with soft power. Now, how can you use innovation as a soft power tool? Well, if you have the means of advanced systems of innovation, you can reach out to other countries and help them in that matter. Or if you have the funds, maybe you don't have a mature innovation system in place, but you have the funds that can enable and accelerate and advance innovation in other nations. What better way to build bridges with other nations? So that's how I see soft power and innovation.
Thank you very much. So it's really interesting what has happened over the last century, where innovation was actually hard power, because innovation created weapons, missiles, innovation created the nuclear bomb. And now innovation is creating goodwill and soft power instead of being hard.
But innovation created drugs that save people. It improved healthcare tremendously.
If I can stay with you just for a minute, can you tell us about, because I'm interested, I think the audience is also interested, in how does that fit with Mubadala's strategy, and what's Mubadala doing in the US?
Certainly. So Mubadala is a sovereign wealth fund from Abu Dhabi. It's one of the major software wealth funds. It's an investment arm of Abu Dhabi. The venture team is part of Mubadala Capital, and the venture team is focused completely on innovation in science and technology. And so what we do is we invest in startups globally. So we have an office in San Francisco that you talked about. We have an office in London that covers Europe. And we're reaching out globally to find the best breakthrough technologies. And we connect these startups with business, industry, and government in the UAE. We help advance the reach of the technologies of these startups. We connect them to our ecosystem of companies. Mubadala has around 58,000 employees in 30 countries. So it's quite of a massive ecosystem. So when we invest in a company, we don't just invest, we create value for the company as well.
Thank you very much. Dr. Manal, if I can come back to you and just address one of the points you mentioned of linking humanitarian work in all of its different dimensions to soft power. To the average person out there, there are so many humanitarian efforts that the UAE does, and there are many entities that do that. You mentioned an umbrella like the Mohammed Barash's Global Initiatives, for example. At the country level, how is this all coordinated? How is the effort coordinated, and how is it linked to a higher level strategy?
Actually, humanitarian work in the UAE is very well regulated. It's so well regulated that we have too many regulators.
Too many.
Too many regulators.
Deregulation is one of the benefits of agile government, by the way.
It is if it's implemented correctly.
True.
Actually, we're very happy that we have that standard of regulation in the UAE. Coming from the charity perspective, I've worked with different countries. Actually, when we first started the Noor Dubai Foundation, which is one of the arms of the MBRGI, we first started just with one regulator, which was the governmental, the Islamic Affairs, and it's an authority that's governed by the government of Dubai. At that time, they were the regulator, they were the auditors, and they were the licensing body, which might not be the perfect model.
Governance-wise.
Exactly. So nowadays, we've got the umbrella of MBRGI. We're also working very closely and on a direct level with the MOFA, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They support us and also help us in not in the regulation, but in providing the support we need and the guidance that we need if we are taking our work abroad to different countries. And by abroad, I mean to countries of need. And as you're aware, most countries of need of our work are actually countries that are having either conflict, political conflict, or countries that have suffered from environmental disasters. So it might not be the safest place to work, but having the support of MOFA, it gives us a guarantee, a sort of a guarantee on when to go and where to go, who to work with. So since that umbrella has been established, we feel safer and more supported to actually work in these countries. We also have the support of our embassies. Our other countries, the embassies are only there to issue visas and for diplomatic relationship. But if you visit, for example, our embassy in Bangladesh, you'll see that they have dedicated an entire floor at the embassy only for the humanitarian work that is coming from the UAE. Another country that's recently opened its doors to UAE humanitarian work is Nigeria. You might wonder, maybe Nigeria is not a country of need, but there are areas in Nigeria. For example, the Noor Dubai project is a 5-year infrastructure development project in healthcare. It's based in Katsina State, which is at the borders with Niger. So the number of beneficiaries from our program are 9 million Nigerians, but then we're also expecting more than 12 million from Niger to actually come and benefit from this program. So the first thing we did before launching the program, we have signed an MOU with the First Lady of Nigeria to guarantee that they will allow people from neighboring country to benefit from this program. And that was one of the agreements that we actually used the soft power to go ahead with it and make it happen. The collaboration between us and the Nigerian government has been so strong that we have managed to not just develop an infrastructure development program in Nigeria, but also to help other countries benefit from it. So that's one of the things that we're very proud of in Noor Dubai. Now, going back to the regulating authorities in the UAE, we don't only look at them as regulators, we look at them more as for guidance. They have been so supportive. They are using a lot of smart technologies in order to gather data for us. Data is very important for us. That's how we end up choosing the beneficiaries, the countries we enter, the programs we do in every country, because we don't follow the same program. We look at the needs. and we get all this information from the regulators. So it has been, it's good to have so many of them.
Amazing work. Thank you for sharing with us the developments in Nigeria and other areas. That's something that perhaps most people still don't know about, but hopefully we'll get to know more as it progresses, and wish you all the best there.
Thank you.
If I can start the second dimension or the second objective with Bernardino, how do we, in this day and age, diplomacy is affected, and trade and everything else, soft power included, of course, affected by media, social media, news and fake news, and from a diplomatic point of view, how do you navigate all this? It's gets complicated, more complicated every day. Everybody is joining in, individuals, media organizations, countries. Not everyone is objective or neutral. How do you navigate through that without becoming negative and do the same as they do?
Well, probably the answer is a bifold answer. It requires, first of all, the main topic of this conference, and I congratulate you for choosing the topic, which is agile government. Things are time sensitive today. You cannot afford, as in the past, to take some time to reflect and then to react in sometimes in a matter of days or weeks. Look at what happened recently in China. We have been reading these last days that President Xi Jinping tried 2 weeks before the crisis erupted to encourage his teams, both in the region and in the central government, to react, and they didn't. Why? Because they were always lagging behind, and China is not an example of a state that usually lags behind. Is a very innovative country.
That's surprising.
They are very well trained, but the problem is that today these waves move so fast that everything a government does is time sensitive. The other is that you have so many actors involved, including actors reacting from abroad. So again, if we go to the China corona crisis, we didn't have only the government sending one message, the society sending a different message, but we also have, as it is always the case nowadays, foreign officials in some cases, foreign citizens in other cases, international organizations like the World Health Organization reacting, and many of them just sending fake messages for different reasons. Some of them just to undermine China, others because this is the nature of social media today. In some cases, machines reacting, these bots and robots adding to the conversation. So how it is possible to survive and to navigate, as you said? Well, having the teams and having the tools that are both aware of this time sensitiveness and aware of the need to be always ahead. It is the most difficult challenge. It requires a lot of training. It requires a lot of consistency, and it requires the capacity also to be humble. To accept that no matter how good your teams are, how strong your message is, as again the recent example showed in the case of China, that you may find yourself in a difficult situation, and then you have to be creative. You have to be able, whatever the spin and whatever the direction of things, to change, to move in a different direction. Today, one of the aspects that citizens inside and outside societies don't accept anymore is arrogance. You know, if you think, well, you know, we are a very strong and powerful state, as again the case of China, but your citizens perceive that you're trying to react with arrogance, it is not going to work, even in a case like China. I think the UAE, and this has been my experience in the last 5 years, has been doing quite well in navigating these waters, and probably the secret is not taking anything for granted, not trying to be arrogant. You know, this is a country that has enormous successes. Doctor just mentioned the humanitarian action. In other aspects, different levels of success. It has the dimension it has, but it is obviously understood everywhere as a country which is punching above its weight. And the reason is precisely this consistency, this capacity to react, and then also a very effective soft power, you know, which you can see in so many different initiatives as the sovereign funds, the humanitarian action. We are working, for instance, from the Emirates Diplomatic Academy, not only in traditional diplomacy, but also in new instruments, for instance, the SDG Center, which is an initiative where we are using not only diplomatic traditional resources, but we are using also academy, we are using, including very technical areas. We work a lot with the Federal Competitiveness and Statistics Authority. These, who could think 30 years ago that statistics, such a technical and mathematic concept, could be used to project soft power abroad, and we're doing it. So the short answer to your question on how to navigate these waters is trained teams, good coordination at all government levels, and consistency.
Yes, thank you very much. That's a very important and interesting perspective. And your comment about China is quite relevant. China has been a target for a number of reasons, economic growth and all that. And a problem like Corona seems to have exasperated the efforts to attack instead of being human. And I think that's something that you mentioned is a characteristic of this country. And we all know that within a couple of days of the crisis, for example, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed phoned the Chinese president, offered support and help, as he did a few weeks ago in the case of bushfires in Australia and all that. It seems to be an attribute that not all leaders and politicians have, to rise to the challenge and be human. It's not put politics aside and work at a human level, which seems to be a pinnacle of soft power.
At a human and it is very important at an individual level.
Yes.
There was a clash in China, you know, the Asian big states always enhance this community aspect over the individual element. What we have seen is a very impressive reaction in the Chinese society when the doctor who alerted about Corona, who is one individual, there was a perception in the Chinese society that the government was not treating him the way he should have been treated. And it is very impressive to see how a country with such community values is reacting for one individual. And it's a very important lesson for all of us on how today social media also are about individuals. You know? So it's not only the human as a community concept, but also as individuals. You know, these role models are very important, and in social media, if we want governments and states to be successful in projecting influence abroad, government officials have also to be role models.
And your, that's important, and your academy's role in accelerating sustainable development goals is to be commended. And these are great efforts. And just for the benefit of the audience, our last conference last year was on sustainable development goals. And we were very pleased to invite you, and you spoke about that as well. And it's all part of the diplomacy and soft power, and ultimately being human and focus on the community and the individual. If I can go to Dr. Makki and ask him about the media and what gets reported, does it factor into your calculations? Do you watch it? Do you care about it when you make acquisitions? Does it impact your work?
We always care about the media, but not everything that is portrayed in the media is very accurate, as we've seen lately. But social media is one of the outcomes of innovation. It has its good aspects, it has its bad aspects. In terms of soft power, though, direct communication is the key. Media, of course, can play a role. It can play a positive role. It can play a negative role. And in terms of soft power, I think it's very important to look at the country that you are dealing with, that you are developing relationships with. And the kind of tool that you use may be innovation, if that's very relevant to the country you're dealing with. It may be humanitarian, if that's more relevant to the country that you're dealing with. So I think you have to have a tool set, and in that tool set of soft power, you choose the right tools to deal with the right country, and in some cases, media plays a significant role now.
Yeah, that's and perhaps stronger and stronger role as things develop, and especially technology and the way people communicate. Thank you. If I can ask Dr. Manal to briefly comment on the same topic. Media, fake news, humanitarian work sometimes suffers from bad news in terms of, or fake news in terms of conspiracy theory and everything else. Do you pay attention to that? Do you manage it? Does it affect your work?
Yes, actually, we pay a lot of attention to that. We have a full sector for it. When it comes to healthcare, and if we look at medical tourism, the growth in medical tourism is based on the reputation of healthcare in a country. As I said at the beginning of the session, soft power is how much people like you. So if they feel safe to seek medical attention in your country, then you have achieved your goals when it comes to increasing the sales for medical tourism. And I think the United Arab Emirates, and specifically Dubai, has achieved that, because we have seen the numbers. When it came to the growth in medical tourism, we have grown in the past year by 5.5%, which is quite an achievement. And we couldn't have done that if we did not market for Dubai the good quality healthcare, the accessibility of healthcare, and also all the things that make Dubai a destination for medical tourism. This also includes how tolerant and how safe the country is. Nobody wants to go and seek medical treatment in a country that doesn't have good healthcare, or that has strict rules and regulation for accessing the healthcare, such as visas, or such as finding it hard to reach out to a physician. If you look at how the healthcare is structured in Dubai, today, just this morning, there was an article in the news that the United Arab Emirates is getting overcrowded with healthcare providers. Unfortunately, that article looked at the demands of the community. It did not look at the strategic initiatives that are targeting medical tourism. Because when I plan for healthcare in a country, I also look at the trends of medical tourism and people coming in from different countries to seek medical attention in Dubai. Now, going back to your question on social media or media in general, I think social media plays a very important role, both in whether it was medical tourism or any other program or strategy that actually works with or uses soft power to improve its outcomes. The reason for that is the current and the next generation of the community, the youth, are more connected than ever. And they use social media primarily to stay connected and to stay informed. I don't know when was the last time I read a newspaper. For
It's
now
there
years.
for decoration only.
Exactly. No, it has other uses as well. But I think most of us are being informed more through social media. And doctors, physicians, and healthcare providers have already understood the importance of this technology. And I think a lot of them are using it as marketing tools. It's reaching out to beyond the borders, to other different countries and different providers. And that's how we are growing our medical tourism sector. People are targeting certain physicians who are practicing in the UAE through their social media accounts, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, or even Facebook. If you want something to spread, whether it's real news or fake news, you just have to post it, and you'll see how it will become a trending topic. So I think proper use and proper monitoring as well, as a government, proper monitoring of social media is very important, both for the soft power, if you have the strategy and if you have the initiatives of soft power, and as well as for the for your strategy.
And you can use technology to
Yes, of
monitor.
course.
So
Yes.
the latest technologies, you can even read faces and
Facial
tell from the
recognition.
faces, not just facial recognition, but tell emotion, tell intent, tell whether they're happy or they're not happy.
Actually, this is a project that we have launched in Dubai Health Authority to support people with visual impairment in buildings, and it's going to be also launched in Japan during the next Olympics. We're going to have it piloted in one of our health centers. The technology is not just, as you mentioned, face recognition. If someone is visually impaired and he enters a healthcare facility or any other government facility, currently what we use is the tactile paving. If you're aware of it, these are the small metal or plastic pieces that are on the floor to guide people with visual impairment to where they should go. But it doesn't tell him, it's not a wayfinder. It just tells him whether the road is safe or not safe. And we've seen it happen a lot where people trip on it. So we've worked together with some of the innovators, and we thought, why not have something similar to GPS inside a building? And we've come up with it, and it uses the sensor technology. It actually speaks to a person with visual impairment to tell him where exactly he should go. And once he opens the door to the clinic, it tells him who is sitting in front of him through face recognition, and it can also tell him what are his emotions. So if a person with visual impairment walks into my office and I was unhappy or I was stressed or I was a very happy person that day, he will recognize that by just using this technology. So that's one of the ways where we use the technology to empower people with disability. And I think it has helped the healthcare sector through the technology in implementing, also through soft power. One of its main pillars is getting closer to the community, getting more accessible to them.
Thank you very much. This has been great. I'm going to change course a bit in the last round of the discussion because we only have 7 minutes. And if I can ask each moderator to give us 2 minutes. The initial plan was to talk about how you train people, but I think, given the time, if you allow me, and take advantage of the audience. The audience it's a diversified audience, but a good percentage of government, senior government, and future government leaders, current and future government leaders. If you have 2 minutes each to tell them what is it that you want them to do to support your role, to support your sector in the best possible way. 2 minutes. It's a pitch for the audience. What do you want government to do to support you? Anybody, you can go.
Well, I'll start. I think we need to support research and development to a much larger extent.
Yes,
if you look at funding in the United States, for example, the public research expenditures is around 127 billion last year, but there was over 400 billion in R&D from business and industry. And add to that about 108 billion from venture capital funding of startups. This is R&D, especially at the earlier age. And I think we look to government to accelerate, enhance, and increase R&D funding, not just with higher education, but also research in schools, and connect the two together, because that's how you build innovation systems. And in addition to that, work very closely with venture capital and industry that is looking for innovation and for supporting innovation in the nation.
Research and development, music to most of people's ears here, especially the academics in the room. The government has highlighted this as an issue. It's part of the 2021 agenda. And we'll see next year how we do in terms of the KPI assessment. Thank you. Dr. Manal?
Yeah. Well, I think what's currently happening within the government of the United Arab Emirates, I think they have realized already the importance of soft power, and I think that every government entity, regardless of its scope of service, has already incorporated that into its strategy. But what I think what we need right now is from the individuals who are working or practicing in these government entities, what they need to know is be well informed. What is their role? What is their role in implementing or empowering others in terms of soft power? Because I think it is a bit underestimated, mainly because of the lack of knowledge or understanding what soft power is and how much each one of them can influence the outcome of their projects through soft power. So I think having them well informed, stay well informed, and stay educated about the importance of soft power is a key factor in the development.
Thank you. Bernardino?
Well, I would say that this is a two-step process. And if I have a message to leave for our audience today, is that, first of all, you have to get the best training. And I think this country has extraordinary excellence centers like yours. I think modestly, the Emirates Diplomatic Academy is also one of them. So it's possible to get the best training, but there is a second part, which is be a critical thinker. What do I mean? We have machines that are learning how to make decisions, autonomous decisions, and at the same time, in many countries, one has the impression that people are learning how to not to make decisions. Whatever your training, whatever the directions, the messages, the narrative that a government and a society as a whole have, every one of us is an individual in a different context, in a different setting, with different interlocutors, and we have to be able to adapt to every situation, and the only way to do that is by being critical thinkers, by being people able to understand dynamics, to understand our narratives, but then to adapt them, sometimes even to change it. That's, I think, the best advice I can give to our audience, which is the same advice, by the way, I give to our students at the Emirates Diplomatic Academy.
I'm sure that's true. And one of the biggest challenges, you focus on the individual, one of the biggest challenges of agile government in the age of empowering the individual, where the individual is the king, is also to balance the rights and the privileges of the individual and the community. And that's one of the challenges of agile government. That's a challenge of future government, and it's a serious challenge. There is no one answer to it, but at least we know the question, and that's an important step.
I kind of think the team is the key, not the individual, but
team.
That's for next year.
Okay, well, next year we'll do on team agility.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
One last message.
Yes.
Great nations are built on great schools and great universities, and it starts by supporting them and supporting innovation and R&D funding.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm sure the audience does. On behalf of the Mohammed bin Rashid School of Government and our great audience, I thank you. You are individuals who are distinguished. You do great work for the country and great work for humanity, and it has been my personal privilege and honor to moderate your session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Professor, for moderating that discussion, and thank you to the experts for the invaluable insights on leveraging soft power. Ladies and gentlemen, our upcoming session and speaker